Okay, so welcome back to our series of using the stained glass kits that you can get at Hobby Lobby. This is going to be part of the series where we're doing soldering. Sorry it's been a while. I have a new studio space and I'm kind of just getting everything set up and squared away. But I wanted to show you guys that I'm going to be using just a very basic 100-watt soldering iron that you can get from Hobby Lobby for $15. We're going to use this so I can show you that you don't need very much to get started. I want to plug it in a few minutes ahead of time. I don't like to leave my irons on. It will burn the tip out. So when I'm not using it, or I know it's going to be a while before I use it, I wait to turn that on. That plugged in. Another thing that you're going to need is a piece of a sponge. I just cut this off of one. Okay. And I like to use liquid flux to help keep my my tip clean, and also it helps pick up solder pieces. So I'm going to have some of that on hand. I'm going to use the little brush that came, the flux brush that came in the kit. And I'm going to use the solder gel, the flux gel that came with the kit. And this is the solder that came in the kit. I want to show you guys how it burns the tip off after you plug it in, and then you just finish wiping it off. Burns that little plastic bit. Okay, so we're on to part 3. We've foiled, and now we're on to the flux part. And it says step 1. Once all pieces of glass have been foiled, place them all back into their respective place on the pattern sheet, which we did. Leave about a 16-inch gap between each piece to allow solder to flow in between the seams. Larger gaps do happen, so fill these spaces with solder thoroughly. Not a problem. Step 2, using metal pins, place the pins around the glass design and secure them into the board. Once your piece is secure, open your flux container and dip your flux brush until the bristles are coated in the flux gel. Step 3, with your brush in hand, coat the copper foil on your glass pieces with the flux. Make sure to spread and evenly coat all along the foil and the edges of the glass. It is crucial to coat all of the copper so the solder can properly adhere and fuse the pieces together. And then on to part 4 of soldering, which is step 1. Unroll about 4 inches of solder from the provided solder coil. Hold the soldering iron handle in your dominant hand while holding the spool of solder in your other hand, which is like this. Starting with the connecting joints of the pieces, apply a small amount of solder to fuse the pieces in place. To do this, touch the tip of your soldering iron to the tip of the solder wire. Allow the metal bead on the iron and let it flow down into the copper foil. You will see the metal flow into the seam as you go. Once you have added solder to all of your connecting joints, it's time to add solder to the seams. Starting from the edge of your piece, move both your hands along the seam all the way to a joint. Move together in a quick but steady pace, allowing enough solder to touch the tip of the iron and keep a consistent flow of solder to melt into the seam. Step 4. When you reach the iron to your joint, pull away the solder and iron and look for any bunched up spots. You can clean up and make smoother lines by going over the whole line again with just your solder iron tip in one fluid motion. Step 5. Keep adding solder to your seams until the entire piece is bonded together. Then flip to the other side and brush with flux before soldering the rest of the piece. Okay, so now that our gun is really well heated here. Okay. Now, if you're a beginner, I should have said this before, something that might help is tacking your pieces into place. I used to do that a lot when I first started, just with a regular tack, thumb tack. and then you hold it there and it doesn't move, and you can tack one on the other side. I don't know what I do with my other tack. Here it is. And then that way your piece is secure and it's not going to move. And I used to just go around the whole thing and do it. I don't do that so much anymore, but it's a good starting thing to do. So we'll start there. We're gonna just tack it all together first. Here's our first tack. See how it moved? I'm gonna move it back into place the way I want it. Stays hot for a minute. Okay. Just gonna do little tacks throughout the whole thing first, and then we'll come back and solder it together. And remember, you want some gaps. I'm very gently going to touch it. Very gently. See how it didn't fill it? Come back, touch it again. I mean, you're really just hovering over the glass and letting the solder just fall into it. Barely touching it. Okay, so that's all tacked together. Now we're going to tack together the star. The liquid might be good to use like that, unless you have it. If you have it tacked, it doesn't matter. Or you can hold it. Right now you just want 1 point of fixation. We can come back and straighten that up before we tack it. Now these were not ground very well. I don't know how this is going to turn out. But I'm trying to do this without using a lot of extras, without people spending more money than they need to, just to see if you are interested in it. Seems crazy to spend a lot of money when you're just getting started, to see if it's, you know, when you're not even sure it's something you want to do. Again, we're just gonna touch it slightly. Okay, so we are all tacked. go ahead and finish our soldering. And I mean, at this point, you can remove it from your pattern if you don't want to ruin your pattern. It's always good to keep your patterns if you can, because you might want to remake this again with different colors. And you can certainly cut it and grind it a lot better than what they did. So we'll go ahead and remove that. Okay, so this is our piece. Whoops, wrong one. And at this point, I like to put a movie on. Now this gun is going to run hot because there's no temperature control on it. So you're probably going to have to clean it off quite a bit. And the paste, the Flux paste, is a little bit more goopier, but it's a lot less fumier, which is really nice. I do recommend doing this in a room with ventilation. And if you're very sensitive, it's good to wear a mask. They also have filters you can get, fans with filters and stuff, if it's something that you get into. Okay, so now I'm going to put down my final layer of solder, and I'm going to clean this off a little bit because I want my solder lines to be as clean as possible. And this is cool. This glass is cooled down enough to be able to do this. You want to wait for it to cool down before you spray it or get it wet. And we're going to do the edge and stuff. And this is just alcohol. I think this is 70%. Now, because this is a small piece, I'm going ahead and doing all this with the flux, but if this was a larger piece, I would not do that. I would just do in segments, because you don't want to leave the flux on it overnight or anything like that. It's not good for your glass, it's not good for your tape. So I really like to only flux it when I'm going to be soldering, and then clean it off after. You just want to hold and pull. And you might have to do it a few times. I mean, you don't want to heat it to where it melts all the way through, but you'll learn what that feels like as you go. The better you get, the more used to soldering you get, the more you'll learn to feel that. Now these gaps were pretty big because we did not grind these pieces. However, might not be enough solder for the gaps that we have. We're gonna try. But it's getting there. If you're struggling with getting a really good solder line, sometimes it's good to go ahead and dot your line like this. And then we can come back and clean it up and make it a nice clean line. Okay, now onto the other side. Okay, let's do our little star here. Not the most even of all stars, But, you know, we don't have to use this. I can show you guys another alternative to this. Okay, so we're going to do the edges. Just clean this off really quick. Okay. I want to be careful on this, you don't get burned, because it could drip off the edge. It's still a little warm. Might have to go back and forth with it a little bit to get it the way you want it. We want to build a little bit of solder on the edge where it's a little rough because we didn't get to grind it. Okay, so now we're going to do the edges of this. So we got our edges done. You can see they're not that great, but I'm going to patina this, and I'm also going to show you guys a couple ways that we can improve this. We're going to complete the project as it is with the kit, but then I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some things that I would do to make it better. So that's where we're at right now.